The night was quiet in a way that cities almost never are, the kind of silence that makes people uneasy without knowing why. And then someone looked up and saw it, a shape hanging in the sky where no aircraft should ever be able to stay still, a cold metallic disk hovering above the lights of the city like a coin frozen in the darkness, and at first people thought it was a trick of the light or some strange reflection from the clouds, but it did not move. It did not blink, and it did not make a sound. It simply watched, suspended above thousands of unaware people going about their night below. And within minutes the first photos appeared online, shaky videos filmed from balconies and parking lots, and the same message began spreading across social media again and again. What is that thing in the sky? Because whatever it was, it did not behave like any plane, helicopter, or drone anyone had ever seen. It just hovered perfectly still over the city as if gravity had simply decided to ignore it. And witnesses would later say that the air itself felt strange, like the moment before a storm, even though the sky was completely clear. And then something even more disturbing happened. The object began to move, not slowly like an aircraft adjusting its position, but instantly, sliding across the sky without acceleration, as if it had been teleported from one spot to another. And that was the moment people realized they were not looking at a machine built with any technology they understood, because nothing human moves like that. Nothing human floats silently above a city without engines, without wings, without any visible means of staying in the air. And yet this object did exactly that, calmly drifting over streets and buildings while thousands of people watched from below, some fascinated, some terrified, and some convinced they were witnessing something the world was never meant to see. And strangely enough, this was not the first time something like this had happened. Because decades earlier, long before smartphones and live streams, entire cities reported the exact same terrifying sight. Enormous disc-shaped objects hovering silently above crowded neighborhoods while military radar scrambled to figure out what they were tracking. One of the most famous incidents happened in 1952 above Washington, D.C., where multiple flying saucers were detected on radar moving directly over the capital of the United States. Pilots were scrambled to intercept them, but the objects moved faster than any aircraft at the time, disappearing and reappearing across radar screens like ghosts in the sky, and people on the ground reported glowing discs floating silently above the monuments and government buildings. Some witnesses swore the objects seemed to watch the city as if studying it, and when fighter jets approached, the objects vanished instantly, only to return minutes later after the jets were gone, repeating the same pattern again and again throughout the night, leaving military officials with no explanation that made sense. And that same pattern has appeared in reports all over the world. Giant silent saucers hovering above cities for minutes or sometimes hours before suddenly accelerating into the sky at speeds that would tear any human aircraft apart. And what makes these sightings so unsettling is not just the shape of the objects but the way they behave. They do not act like machines exploring randomly or passing through by accident. They linger above populated areas as if observing the people below, and witnesses often describe the same eerie feeling while watching them, a deep unsettling silence, because unlike helicopters or airplanes, these objects produce absolutely no sound, even when they move at impossible speeds. And there are cases where entire neighborhoods lost power while a disk hovered overhead, streetlights flickering and cars stalling as if some invisible force was interfering with electricity itself. And when the objects finally leave, they do not fly away like aircraft but shoot upward into the darkness so quickly that people barely have time to react before the sky is empty again, leaving nothing behind except confused witnesses and grainy footage that skeptics argue about for years. but sometimes the sightings are too large and too widely reported to simply dismiss. Like the night in 1997 when thousands of people across Arizona looked up and saw a massive formation of light silently gliding over Phoenix. Witnesses described a gigantic triangular craft blocking out the stars as it passed overhead, completely silent despite its enormous size. Some said it was as large as several football fields moving slowly across the sky while the entire city watched in disbelief. And what terrified many witnesses was the realization that if the object truly was a craft, then something enormous was flying above them without anyone on the ground knowing what it was or where it came from. And even more disturbing is the fact that similar objects have been reported above cities for more than 70 years. Always the same smooth metallic discs, always the same impossible hovering movement, always the same sudden disappearance into the sky, and in many cases military pilots themselves have reported seeing these objects performing maneuvers that should be physically impossible, accelerating from a complete stop to thousands of miles per hour in seconds without producing sonic booms or heat signatures that modern aircraft generate, which leads to the question that continues to haunt researchers and investigators who study these sightings. If flying saucers truly exist and they can hover silently above cities whenever they want, then who built them and why are they watching us? Because whatever technology allows a craft to float motionless above a city and then vanish into space in seconds is far beyond anything publicly known to exist, and if someone possesses that technology, they have chosen to remain completely silent about it while their machines drift quietly through our skies, appearing just long enough for people to notice before disappearing again, leaving behind the unsettling feeling that perhaps humanity is not alone in the skies above our cities, and that sometimes when people look up at night and see something hovering silently in the darkness, it might not be a star, a plane, or a satellite at all, but something far stranger slowly observing the world below, before slipping back into the blackness of space where no one can follow.